All right, so we're going to pick this up on page 2. We're going to be on page 2 of the sheet. We did the Ritva, basically we did the Ritva and the Meiri. And again, the issue that the issue that came up at the end of the Ritva is whether it's judiciable when we have an HaMehapech b'charora. Is it judiciable or not? The Ramban is going to be a very all-encompassing Ramban. One of the advantages of seeing these Rishonim, there are basically 4 sugyas that touch on the issue. There's really only one sugya where it explicitly says Ani HaMehapech b'charora uboacher v'notla nikra Rasha. There's only one place, okay, and that's the Gemara in Kedushin. And the case there happened to be where Rabbi Abba didn't know that Rav Gidl was trying to get it. And the consequences were that he was told to sell it and he didn't. So that opens up a lot of ambiguities. But there are 3 other sugyas that all of the Rishonim connect, because each one of them opens the door for the possibility of an Ani HaMehapech b'charara. Okay, there was the sugya in Bava Metzia about falling on the Metzia or falling on the Peah. There was the sugya in Bava Basra about the fishermen. And there was the sugya in Bava Basra, the very strange sugya about the goy who got money from a Jew, but the Jew didn't make a shtar kinyan on it, and another Jew stepped in and took it. All of those open up the door for the possibility of Ani HaMehapech b'charora. Tosfos brings all of them in the various places. All the Rishonim talk about it. And the beauty of seeing these Rishonim, and the Ramban is going to be a perfect example, is we get to keep reviewing all of those sugyas, and we've got to keep all of those sugyas in mind. So let's start with the Ramban. This is the Ramban on the scenario in Bava Basra of the Jew who bought property from the goy, didn't make a kinyan on it except he gave the goy money, and then the Gemara there says it's harei kehefker. Okay, nichse hagoy harein kemidbar. I'm sorry, harein kemidbar, and therefore the second Jew comes in and he owns it. So says the Ramban, Pirush Harebin Shmuel. That's the Rashbam, which we saw. Everybody see where I am, and it's page 2 in the Chidushei Ramban source. Pirush Rashbam, Aval Nikra Rasha. So the second Jew, it came in, and the property was not yet in the possession of this first Jew who paid the money, and it has a din of Kemidbar, and therefore the second guy who came in and made a kinyan gets to keep it, but said the Rashbam, Nikra Rasha, because it's a case of Ani HaMehapech b'charora, the first Jew, uboacher v'notla, the second Jew. Ki hadi garsina beperka omer, Ani HaMehapech b'charora v'notla himenu amar le Nikra Rasha. So that is the Rashbam. We saw that Rashbam inside. The Yesh Makshib, and this again, here we come to the Tosfos and all of the other Rishonim. Midyamrina beperk shnai mogzin. Roas hamitzia v'nafal alea ubo acher v'hichzik ba zeh shehichzik ba zacha ba. And it doesn't say anything about the second guy being called a Rasha, even though it's very clear that the first guy was a Mahapech b'charara. He just didn't make a kinyan on it. And the Gemara there says, since he didn't make a kinyan, and he indicated that he doesn't want his Dalet Amos to be a kinyan, so therefore it's still hefker, and the second guy can get it. So what happened to Ani HaMehapech b'charora there? V'aisina nami hasam haditan ve'beseches peya natal mixes peya v'zork alashar piras talis olem aviyuno sohimenu v'hani. Both of those cases, says the Ramban, happen b'charora hey. Skip the next 2 lines because it brings a case we didn't see, and I'm not going to go into it because it's a little more complicated than we need to get. And go to the 2 lines, Uparik Rabbeinu Tam. 2 lines down. Uparik Rabbeinu Tam, the famous answer of Rabbeinu Tam. The Kulu Lokashan, why? The Chiamrina b'Meseches Kedushin Nikra Rasha b'Mehapech ba lilokcha uboacher v'lokcha. The only time I say Ani HaMehapech b'charara is not when he's trying to get it from Hefker, but when he's trying to buy the charara and somebody else comes and buys it. She'im lo lokach zu, because the second guy, if he doesn't buy it, the charara that the first guy's trying to get, if the second guy doesn't buy it, yimtza cheres likach. He could find it somewhere else. And then he adds another point. So what happens if the second guy can't find another deal? Okay, ain't if Seder Meruba. He's not losing money. He's just not able to make a deal. So he didn't lose anything, the second guy. Aval b'davar shel hefker, dekazochi lenafshei. But in a hefker where the second guy is getting something for himself, lo mikri rasha de lo mashkech achrina, because he's not. We can't say go find it somewhere else. He can't find a metzia somewhere else, a davar shel hefker. And here are key words which we already saw also earlier. The chayav kodmin. We saw that in the Rashba, in the Ritva. Chayav kodmin means I'm not mechuyev to give to worry about your money more than I am about my money. And since it's hefker and I won't be able to get this thing, I'm not called a rasha. That was the Rabbeinu Tam. Koloma Rav Chadidei Adifa Masha'en came b'mecher. All right. So far we've seen this is the Rabbeinu Tam. And now the Ramban is going to add a little twist to it. This is already a controversial statement. How about if the deal is such that Ruvain is negotiating to get a deal, and it's really it's a fire sale, it's a discounted deal. So your default would be, oh wait, that's more like a metzia. You can't assume you're going to be able to find a discounted deal somewhere else. No. Even a discounted deal, hoel umecheru ein lechalik. At the end of the day, we're talking about a financial transaction. We don't make a difference between that and all financial transactions, and it doesn't have the din of hefker. Not everybody agrees with that, as we're going to see in future Rishonim. Okay, so till here, basically all he's doing is he's summarizing the Rabbeinu Tam, but adding a little bit of a twist about a mecher could even be a mecher at a discounted price. But he also adds what the Ritva adds that the Tosfos didn't say explicitly, and that is chayecha b'chayei chavercha chayecha kodmin. Since I won't be able to find it somewhere else, I'm allowed to take it for myself. But if it's a business deal, go find another business deal. Other business deals are always available. Till here, good. Any questions till here? Pretty much, we've seen this before. Again, the Ramban adds that twist about a discounted price. Next, now he gets the other Gemara. Right? And the Gemara wants to know how come there isn't a pasakta l'chiyusi there. Okay, I'm sorry. Why isn't there a din of it's hefker? Why are we pushing them away? All right, we don't push away the millstone. The guy who's opening up a grindstone. We don't push him away. Why are we pushing away the fisherman? Because shiny dugim diod siara, and that's a very ambiguous answer. Lots of different explanations. When we did the Gemara in Bava Basra, we saw all the explanations of yod siara. Here's the Ramban's explanation of why the fishermen are different than the case of the grindstone. Ukedivrei meforish shameachar shenitzodu birishuso shelzeh. The assumption is that we're pushing away the other fishermen, because what's going to happen is the second fisherman is going to have a net that's going to capture a fish that was already in the net of the first guy. They went into the first guy's net, but he didn't close the net yet, but it's in his net, and therefore it really should be a kinyan. But then it's after it ate up the bait in the first fisherman's net, it's going to leave and go to the second fisherman's net. And that's considered kind of a gezela. But you can't compare that to the case of the second Jew who went in and made a kinyan in the nichse hagoy that Ruvain bought, and it's now kamidbar, so it's hefker. You can't tell the second Jew, oh, go find hefker nechasim somewhere else. He's not going to find hefker nechasim anywhere else. Okay, so that is how the Ramban understands the picture. Aval, let's keep reading. I mean, again, all of this is aligned with Rabbeinu Tam. Okay? You realize one of the things that we're going to have to talk about, and this is what the Rashbam there talked about as two shitos, the second goy in the case of the Harehen Midbar, does he have to pay the first Jew the money that the first Jew spent to the goy? And we had a machlokas in the Rashbam. And you realize that could make it a difference whether it's a real hefker case. Because if he doesn't have to pay the money, then for sure it's treated like real hefker. You can't tell him, go find a hefker somewhere else. But if he has to pay the money, So then I think everybody will agree that you're going to be called a Russia, okay? Because you're going to have to pay money anyway, so it's not free. So go use your money somewhere else. But we'll see that in the coming Rishonim. Aval Rashi's on now the Raman brings Rashi. Remember, Rashi held that there's ani HaMehapech b'charara even in hefker. So he's arguing, okay. Aval Rashi's al pirisham ani HaMehapech b'charara liskot b'min hefker. O she'itnen lo bala buy it for free. V'chein nir mimasha amru ani. The fact that it says ani HaMehapech b'charara looks like it's not just anybody who's mahapech b'charara. He's got to be in a state of an ani, and therefore it sounds like he's getting it for free. The odd she'ein b'divrei Rabbeinu tam ki'ikar, meaning the Ramban is coming down on the side of Rashi. He says it's not logical to tell me it's only true in a business deal, but it's not true in hefker. If the Gemara uses an example of ani HaMehapech b'charara, that sounds like he's a poor person trying to get it for free, and that's why Rashi says what he says. But you have all these kashas on Rashi. At the end of the day, Tosfos made major kashas on Rashi. V'hanach pirchin lo kasha. So the Ramban is going to have to answer one by one all of the kashas on Rashi that makes it sound like we don't say ani HaMehapech b'charara. We don't call the guy a Rasha when he takes away something that was hefker. The Mitzia, why? Remember, we've got to now figure out why, according to Rashi, who says that there's also ani HaMehapech b'charara, nikra Rasha, by hefker. How come we don't say that by the Metzia case, where he fell on the Metzia, and the other guy came and since Reuven didn't make a kinyan, Shimon's allowed to take it, or the pay we take. Why aren't we calling him a Rasha? What happened to Rasha? Says the Ramban, the Metzia lo haya yodea oso sheyapoch ba. First of all, we're talking about the Reuven. When Reuven passed by, he didn't think that he's going to get it, and all of a sudden he saw it and he fell on it. So what did he really do to acquire it? Nothing. He didn't even know about it. So I didn't really take away something that he thought he's going to get. And number two, v'lo al yedei tarchu ba. He didn't invest any effort to get that mitzvah. Right? He didn't do anything. And therefore, the second guy should be able to get it. And maybe you're going to argue and say, no. At the end of the day, this is a case of ani HaMehapech b'charara, and we should call the second guy Rasha. So why isn't that a kasha on Rashi? Says the Ramban a very simple teretz. Hasam dina kamrina. We're not mechuyev to talk about every contingency and every consequence of what the guy did. All we were talking about was who owns it. But says the Ramban, it's very possible that according to Rashi, the guy who took it away from the guy who fell on it, he's certainly going to be called a Rasha. But we're not talking about that. So don't draw any conclusions from the not mentioning Rasha that, so he's not a Rasha. According to Rashi, of course he's a Rasha. But that wasn't what we were talking about. That wasn't the subject of discussion. The subject of discussion was simply ownership. That already sounds like very, wow, we're going to take it. You can't tell me that if we're going to take the Reuven who fell on the payah, we're going to take him off, that the guy taking him off and getting the payah is called a Rasha. You don't call a guy a Rasha by giving him permission to take Reuven off. So therefore, that's not going to work by payah. Okay? But there's a different teretz for payah. Reuven who falls on the payah, you want to call him, he's an ani HaMehapech b'charara because he's trying to get the payah and he got there first. Every ani is mahapech in that payah. All right? Kol ha'ani mehapchin kemoso achar ha'peyos v'lo hu bilvad mechazer aleha. And therefore, you can't say that the second ani who pulls the first guy off when the first guy did not make a kinyan, you can't call the second guy a ba acher v'nosla from a mahapech b'charara, because the second guy was also a mahapech b'charara.
That's a weird thing to say.
What'd you say?
Isn't that a very weird thing to say? Because the whole point of this is that it's an ani. It's not like aniim hamehapchim b'charara or something like that.
No, wait, I think you're misunderstanding. What we're saying is that when Reuven the ani falls on the payah, and you
Right.
want to say that gives him exclusive rights, and anybody who comes in is called a Rasha,
Right.
you're assuming, you're assuming that the second guy had less rights than the first guy.
Right.
The first guy was HaMehapech, gave him some kind of rights. But before Reuven fell on that payah, was he a HaMehapech in that payah?
Yes.
Yes. But guess what? The ani who didn't fall on the payah is also a HaMehapech in payah, because every ani is trying to get every payah. So therefore, the second guy has no less status of a HaMehapech than the first guy.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that the first guy fell on it, and that's exactly the point. He didn't make a kinyan; he fell on it.
Right.
I want to say his falling indicates that he's mahapech, but he was mahapech before he fell, and the anim who didn't fall are also mahapech. And therefore, all anim are called mahapchim b'charora, and therefore you can't give an advantage to one guy over the other, as opposed to an ani A who's trying to get the cake, and now ani B comes in. That's already not the same thing. Then I could call him a Russian. Okay, and finally, again, the mashkana shel ger is the case we didn't deal with, and we'll leave that. Okay, so this is the Ramban justifying Rashi, saying that the Mitzia, he is a Rasha, according to Rashi, or maybe he's not a Rasha because it's not the same as an Ani HaMehapech, because he didn't invest anything and he really wasn't planning on getting it. Two explanations how Rashi could deal with the Gemara of Mitzia. In Peah, for sure, he's not a Rasha, because the second Ani is no worse than the first Ani. Okay, and that's how the Ramban defends Rashi and the Rashbam, by the way, because the Rashbam clearly in the Gemara, we see in the Gemara of Nichsei Kamidbar that the Rashbam holds like Rashi. Okay, that because it's hefker, that even the hefker there's an ani HaMehapech b'chara. Okay, because the Rashbam calls the guy a Rasha. Okay, next, finish. Let's more Ramban. V'shamanu. Now we get into another issue. I raised that I told you this is coming up in the chat. Okay, so the guy's a Rasha. Are there any judicial consequences to that? Is this a judiciable case? Or the guy's a Rasha, and it's between him and God. You want to be Ois Rasha, give it back. You're willing to handle Rasha. It's your choice to be a Rasha or not. So says the Ramban, Shamatu B'das Rabbeinu Tam. That when it says Nikra Rasha, Rabbeinu Tam says there are consequences, not just between you and God, not just between you and getting an aliyah in shul, but because what you did is Nikra Rasha, Beis Din is going to make you reverse what you did. Says the Raman Lo Mistaber. Raman doesn't like that idea. Again, apparently he said we heard in the name of Rabbeinu Tam. So it could be that Rabbeinu Tam never said it. But the Ramban says if Rabbeinu Tam said it, I don't agree with it. He's going back to our original source, the Gemara in Kedushin. Let's play it out according to that idea of Rabbeinu Tam. So again, how the Ramban understands it. So Rav Gidl is trying to get the property. Rabbi Abba comes in and unbeknownst about Rav Gidl, buys it. Comes to Rav Yitzchak Nafcha, and he activates Ani HaMehapech b'charara. Why did you do it? Lo Yadin, and I didn't know. And now how does the story conclude? So Rav Yitzchak Nafcha says, okay, so reverse what you did. Reverse what you did. And what's the ultimate conclusion? Does he reverse it or he doesn't reverse it?
He tries.
Does Rabbi Abba reverse what he did or not?
No.
He doesn't reverse it because it says lo mar nachas lo lo machas lo. Rav Gidl never ended up with it. Rabbi Abba didn't keep it, but he didn't reverse it. So says the Ramban, mishum din chasim rishonim ninu harei. What do I see from that? Min hadin hayachayev lahachzira. According to Tosfos, what do you mean? Marlo nachas. What do you mean? Because you don't like the bad omen of selling your first property. You had a chiyuv to reverse what you did. According to Rabbeinu Tam, Beis Din can force the Bo'acher v'natla to reverse what he did. And you see that we didn't. So says the Ramban, you see that we don't force him to reverse. Okay, now V'arav Reb Shmuel, that's the Rashbam again. Shekasav Umiu Rasha Mikri Omar, because the Rashbam in that case wrote that he is called a Rasha. Go back to the case in Bava Basra of the Harehim Kamidbar. So the Rashbam said explicitly that the second guy who took the property because it was Harein Midbar, he gets to keep it. But he's called a Rasha. But he doesn't have to pay. The Rashbam said explicitly. There was a machlokas in the Rashbam. The Rashbam brought two deos. Whether, of course, he has to give the Rishon back his money. You can't bend it. You can't just walk away with it. The Rashbam says, Mapito. If that's true, then it's not Kemidbar. It's not Hefker. If the second guy has to pay for what he took, then it's not Hefker. He got a chance to take it, and he's got to pay the first guy. So the Rashbam proved that the second guy does not have to pay. So says the Ramban, you see that according to the Rashbam clearly does not agree with Rabbeinu Tam that when he's Nikra Rasha, that you have to pay, that you have to reverse. Because on the one hand, the Rashbam said he's a Nikra Rasha, because it was an HaMehapech Becharara and he took it, but he doesn't have to pay. Aval matzati l'Rabbeinu Haigo, shekosav b'sefer Mekach b'shar Yudalid, dechayiv la'adurei d'mei. That in the case of the Harein Kemidbar, Shimon does have to pay Ruvain. And yet he's not going to agree with Rabbeinu Tam, or what we heard in Rabbeinu Tam, that all Mahapech B'chararas have to reverse it. But that's a unique case, why we're going to make the second guy pay. Why? V'nirin dvarim kivan demishum zuze dahai mistale goy. Why is the goy out of the picture? Because Ruvain gave him money. And where's that? What when the second guy takes the property, he's really taking property that the first guy had invested money in. At the end of the day, the reason it became Kemidbar is because the first guy, quote, put money into it. So when the second guy takes it, he's taking property that the first guy invested money in. So therefore, mechayven oso lahachzer mos lokech rishon. Okay, so therefore you can't bring any conclusion from that case where we make him pay to a normal case of Nikra Rasha that Beis Din steps in and makes him reverse it. Okay, and again, because it seems from the Gemara in Kedushin that Beis Din does not step in to make him reverse it. But even if you say in the case of the Harein Kemidbar we make him reverse it, it's only because Reuven put money into the deal. Okay. And then he adds another twist here in that whole case. Al hagoy shu mocher v'lo al Yisrael zeh, aval bahanach she'ara bekula lo mechayev lachzer damin klal shekeven she'adayin lo zachaba ein mechayev oso kidei amaron. Meaning, even if you're going to call, let's go back to one of the ways the Ramban learned the pshat in the Metzia case. All right, that the Reuven fell onto it first. Shimon came and took it. And we said, according to Rashi, maybe he's a Rasha. The Gemara just didn't talk about it. But it's very clear we're never going to make Shimon, even if he's a Rasha, pay for it if he doesn't want to. If he wants to, he doesn't want to walk around being called a Rasha. According to Rashi, he can pay. But Beis Din certainly can't make him pay. Okay, that's as far as we wanted to go in the Ramban. Questions till here before we open up the Ran on the Rif. That we need our Gemaras in Kedushin. I think I asked you to bring a Gemara in Kedushin because we want to see the Ran on the Rif. The Rif basically just quotes the Gemara word for word. Okay, this is the Rif Ran on the Gemara in Kedushin on our basic case of Rav Gidel and Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Yitzchak Nafa. Okay, so the Ramban clearly is siding with Rashi, and he doesn't think that even according to Rabbeinu Tam, he doesn't think that you should have to pay if you think that you're a Rasha, but he sides with Rashi that you're a Rasha even in a Hefker. Again, if you remember, the reason for Rashi was that you're nichnas l'chaye chavero. You're mixing it into the chaye chavero, and therefore it's not appropriate. Okay. All right. Okay. So we need I indicated where it is. If you have the old-fashioned Rif, it's Chav Daled in the Dapei HaRif. If you don't have the old-fashioned Rif Ran, it's at the very beginning of the third chapter. Okay, the third chapter starts with the Mishnah, and then it brings, after the whole Mishnah, it brings the Gemara that tells some stories about people who were sent to Shluchim to do Kedushin, and they did it for themselves, and whether they're a Ramai. Okay, and then the Rif brings the case of Rav Gidl HaMehapech is exactly in the middle of the narrow lines. If you have the old-fashioned Dapei Harif, which on page Chav Dalet of the Dapei Harif, but all the Rif does is he literally quotes the Gemara word for word. Okay, quotes the Gemara word for word, where with the conclusion of Mar Nachas lo Mar Nachas lo Mar Nachas lo Mar Nachas lo umiskarya Ari the Rabbana. So the Rif quotes the Gemara simple pshat. Now let's see how the Ramban deals with that. It's right across from that, where the Dibur HaMatchil is Rav Gidl. Okay, this is a very important Ran to again give us another perspective. And then we're going to also see, by the way, a Ran on the Bava Basra Gemara. Hopefully they'll interface. Okay, everybody with me on the Ran on the Rif. Rav Gidl HaMehapech Ba'yara. What did that mean? For the first thing, the Ran learns simple pshat in the words of the Gemara. So what happened? Rav Gidl HaMehapech Ba'yara mechazer ale liknosa. He was going after it to buy it. Kable means he complained. Kabel alav siper divrei tzakoto l'Rebbe Zera. That's what Kable ale means. He complained. He kvetched. He kvetched to Rav Zera, and Rav Zera to Rav Yisuf Nafcha. Wait till I come l'regel. Shadorshim b'hilchos haregel and mekablim pnei harav. And I'm sure that Rabbi Abba is going to come to hear my shir. And then Rabbi Abba asked. Rav Yisuf Nafcha asked Rabbi Abba, Ani Amach b'charora mechazer alea lizkot ba. What's the din? Nikra Rasha said Rabbi Abba. She yored l'chaye chavera. What does that sound like? Rashi or Rabbeinu Tam? Nobody or everybody? That's Rashi. The assumption is that it's hefker, but you're yored l'chaver shel chaver. That's exactly what Rashi said. It's mamish Rashi. Okay. His response was lo havi adana. Sure, Rav Gidl misasik. I didn't know that Rav Gidl was involved in the deal. Okay, and he didn't want to sell it. Our kamaisehili zui li rishona shalacham yolam and lo mistama milsa ina siman tov sheyimkor adam mekcho harishon. So it's clear that Rabbi Abba now owns the property, but Rabbi saying, okay, but you can reverse what you did by selling it to. You can reverse by selling it to Rav Gidl, and he didn't want to do it. And Rav Gidl didn't want to take it for free, and therefore nobody had it, and it stayed for Ari de Rabbanan, Hefker L'Talmidim. That's the end of the Gemara. Now comes in the Ran. This is the Ran talking now on his own opinion. Question, Daniel.
Yes. Did we ever explain what Hefker L'Talmidim means?
Yeah, it meant that the Talmidei Chachamim, it was like a free base medrash. It was like a free base medrash.
I mean, who is going to someone in order for the land to be worth anything? Something needs to be done with it.
You were in Har Nof long enough that when a group of people got a haktsa'at karka,
yeah,
and they had to build a shul on the land that they got.
Right.
How did they do it?
They tried to raise money. They went to Schnorr money, Kulin.
That's what happened. That's what must have happened here. In other words, there's a piece of land, and we say it's available to Talmidei Chacham. Obviously, what are you going to do? You're not going to put your stenders out in an open field. But the idea is that no private person can step in. Private person can't step in. It's now available to Talmidei Chachamim, and you guys go figure out what to do with it. That's again, this is practical. So we don't. I hear what you're asking. The answer is that it was available to Talmidei Chachamim to figure out to do with it. Which is that was that land valuable? Yes, because a private person would have built a mansion on it, and we can't. He can't. Talmidei Chachamim raised money to build a building which belongs now to the tzibur. That's the simple.
Or it had agricultural value, and you could rent it out. Whatever.
I don't think so, because that wouldn't have been called. I don't believe that would have been called. What's the lashon of Ara Derabanan? Why would you call it Ara Derabanan? I don't think that. And Rashi says Hefker L'Talmidim. I don't think the Talmidim became potato farmers.
No, but that they could have make an Arisus deal with somebody in the.
Yeah, but okay, maybe again. Okay, that's not our business. It's not our business.
Fine,
okay?
fine.
All right, Beseder. Okay, Ephraim, I see you you appeared. Did you have a question or not? No. Okay. All right. Amrina Nami. Here's the Ram. Udi Amrina Ani Amapech Becharara Pirish Rashi. What's the scenario? Mechazer Acharei Lizkot Ba Min HaHefker. Oh, she nolo Bal Habayit. That it's not hefker. Either he's trying to get a hefker cake, or there's a baker giving it away. So it's not hefker; it belongs to the baker. But the ani is trying to convince the baker to give it to him. So there are two possibilities: it's either a hefker, or there's a balabait giving it away. The point is, there's no money exchange here. That's the point of Rashi. No money exchange. The chalko alav hatosvos. The omri the becharar shel hefker vaday eina nikra rasha. You can't call a guy who comes in and tries to eat and competes for a hefker cake. You can't call him a Russia because he got there. Because he got it instead of the first guy who was there. The second guy's allowed to do it. Because you can't find another one. So it's not that, okay, if you do it, you're not a Russia. That sounds like, well, you're really not supposed to do it, but if you did it, no consequences. No. You're allowed to lekatchila go do it because it's hefker. Kidid gabe peya, where the first guy landed on it. We pick up the first guy. Four big husky aniyim. Pick him up, take him off, and then go get it. That's lekatchila. That's not you're not called a Russia if you do it because we wouldn't give you instructions to pick the guy up. Okay. Umaisina la leperkamed above metzia nafalo alea piras taliso alea ma'avirin osahimena the lishna de ma'avirin muchach de lekatchila yochol lasoske. So there's no if you did it you're not a Russia. That is not correct. Okay, rather when we're dealing with hefker things, it's every man for himself, and there's no you can't. Well, if you did it, it's okay, but you really shouldn't do it. Tosa says lekatchila you can do it. Okay. Ela ki amrina nikra Russia. So when are you a Russia? According to Rabbeinu Tam, dafka b'charara shehu rotze likach or liknos, according to one of the girsos. Lefi shehu yimtzo liknos b'mokam acher. So if Reuben wants to buy the cake, okay, so then maybe it's the last cake on the shelf. Okay, so go to a different supermarket to buy a different cake. But if Reuben's trying to buy it, then you're a Russia if you buy it instead, because you could go buy it somewhere else. Or Reuven's trying to get a job by the baker because he knows that at the end of every day he's going to be able to take home the extra bread. But he wants to get a job. So then we'd say to Shimon, who is competing for that job, go find a different job. Don't take away the job from Reuven, who's there first. Okay? HaMehapech listaker b'bal habayit. She'im bo acher v'nistaker bo have Russia. She'mipnei shavu yimtzo listaker b'mokom acher. If you're trying to get a job, don't take away the job from Reuven who's trying to get the job. You could go find a job somewhere else. Aval b'misha ma'apech liskos min ha'hefker. But if Reuven's trying to get something from hefker, inami b'matana, or he's trying to convince the balabayit to give him for free, leka mishum ani ma'apech b'charara. That goes back to our bar metzra case. There's no din of bar metzra. Even though bar metzra, we say to the buyer who bought on the border, right? Reuven has a piece of property, and Shimon is selling a property on the border of Reuven. Shimon is selling a property on the border of Reuven, and Shimon buys the property. So we say to Shimon, Reuven can basically give you the money and send you away. But that's only if Shimon bought the property. If Shimon got the property as a matana, so then the bar metzra can't chase him away. The alma b'chihai leka mishum vasisa yasher vatov. So here the Ram finally has mentioned something that we'll see again, is this whole din of Nikra Rosha, says the Ran, is built on Asisa Yasher Vatov. You got to ask yourself, why Reuven's trying to buy a property? Reuven's trying to buy a property. Okay? Reuven's trying to buy a cake. and Shimon comes in and he buys it first. Did Reuven own the cake? Absolutely not. So why are we telling Shimon you're a Rasha? What did I do wrong? Says the Ran, and we'll see other Rishonim say the same thing. It all emanates v'asisa yasher v'hatov. When Chazal legislated your Nikra Rasha, it's a violation of asisa yasher v'hatov. That's what it's built on. And therefore, just like we don't say asisa yasher v'hatov when somebody is going to lose, i.e. the matana, we don't say asisa yasher v'hatov when there's loss. And therefore, he's saying that there's a difference. Let's go back inside again. Let's go back again. Aval, the what? Aval b'misha ma'apek lizkos b'mena hefker o nami b'matana leka mishum anayach b'charora. Kiri amrinu b'perak hamakabel. The matana let b'mishum dinah bar metzra. The alma b'chi hai leka mishum yasar asisa v'atov. In other words, when it's a purchase, I could say to the second guy who wants to buy it, asisa yasar v'atov. Let the first guy buy it. He was there first. I have to flesh out this whole application of asisa yasher v'atov. We'll do it in a minute. So wait a minute. You just got through telling me in Hefker, it's every man for himself. It's first come, first serve. We don't chase you away. So how come we're chasing the fisherman away when the first guy got there first, but he doesn't own the fish? Again, the fact that the fish is near the first fisherman, it's as if the fisherman got it already. So therefore, you're not really coming in and taking something from Reuven that Reuven was going to take from Hefker and you're taking it from Hefker. But Reuven already has attachment to it, and therefore it's not the same as Shimon coming in for something that Reuven was trying to get from Hefker. Okay, so again, this is the Ran, again, siding with Rabbeinu Tam, that in real Hefker, we don't say a Nikra Rasha, because there's no Asisa Yasher V'Hatov in Hefker. Okay? Then we go back. We mentioned this only in passing. There's a poor person banging the olive tree and the olives are falling down. And the olives are Hefker and they're falling into a Hefker place. And yet we say somebody who takes them is Gezel Mishum Midarke Shalom. Okay. Where am I up to? Even though the Ani never picked it up. So why is it Osir Mishum Gezel if the Ani never picked it up? Shiny Hosef Shetarach Behem Lapilom. Meaning since he invested work, it's Gezel. It's worse than Nikra Rasha. You're not. He's even worse than Nikra Rasha. Wait a minute. I just thought you got through telling me that in Davar Shal Hefker he's not a Nikra Rasha, and now you're telling me that in a Davar Shal Hefker the second guy's a Gazlan. The answer is that when the first guy did work and invested effort, so then the Chazal awarded him the rights, even though he didn't make a kinyan, and if they darche shalom, you're not allowed to take it. Zed dat Rabbeinu Tam Zal. Okay, so we saw that in the Tosas. And now the Ran quotes the Ramban, because the Ramban was a Talmud of the Ramban. The Ran was later the Ramban. The Ramban Zal Sover Kedivre Rashi. We saw that. Okay, the Ran obviously saw the Ramban that we saw, and he understands that the Ramban sides with Rashi, and he even gives Teirutzim on all of Rabbeinu Tam's kashas on Rashi. Shafilu b'metzia nikra Rasha. Hi v'zusha shaninu linyan pe'am avirno sahimena, which sounds like not only is it not a Rasha, but we're allowed lekatchila to intervene. Hainu time shalohu bilvad mechazer achareha. The ani who fell on it, he's not the only mahapech becharora. Shari kol aniyim mishapchim kamoso. Achar hapeya. Okay. Now I'm not sure what this means here. Maybe you guys can help me. When it says v'chein das reish, that has to mean Rabbeinu Tam, but I don't know what he means v'chein das Rabbeinu Tam. He just got through talking about the Rashi sheet and the Ramban. So what does he mean? Anybody have any idea? What does he mean? V'chein das Rabbeinu Tam.
Rav, I have Oz V'Hadar has a parentheses around it in a note. Haga.
Yeah, good.
Nicht
Thank you.
nur besid, hadavar baru det har sofer hu v'tzorach lo v'chein das Rabbeinu Chananel zal.
Okay.
Aber Rabbeinu Tam Adarabba hakasa be'atzmo le'el b'samach esfirle v'tzia v'hefker eino noheg din ani HaMehapech b'charara.
Baruch shekivanti, that something's got to be wrong, because I even had to I did a search on what could those Roshei Tevos Reish Taf Mem stand for. Is there any possibility they stand for something besides Rabbeinu Tam? And I came up empty-handed. Okay, so I didn't know what to do. So I said, I'm going to learn it with you guys and see if anybody comes up with a solution. Okay, so that's the best solution. Always, every time this happens, it reminds me of the story with Reb Chaim Brisker, that there was a difficult Rashi, and a balabos comes in one day and gives Reb Chaim Soloveitchik a whole pilpul on how we're going to answer the Rashi. And Reb Chaim Soloveitchik says to the balabos after he hears this, or the Talmud Chacham, maybe big Talmud Chacham, he says, when you get to Olam Haba, you're going to get a big Yasher Koyach from the printer. Because you just gave a whole pilpul on how to make the printer's mistake into a not mistake. Okay, there's such a thing as a printer's mistake. This is a perfect example. Thank you. And no, it's very easy for Reish Taf Mem and Reish Chaf to think, oh, Reish Chaf, it meant Reish Taf, and Reish Taf is Rabbeinu Tam instead of Reish Chaf, Reish Ches. I'm sorry. Anyway, okay, so that's good. Okay, now back into the Rambam. So clearly, the Ran is pointing out the machlokas between Ramban Rashi on one side and the Rabbeinu Tam on the other side. Umikol makom. Now we get to something we haven't spoken about yet, but it's the pink elephant in the room. Ashir HaMehapech b'charara. What about an Ashir HaMehapech b'charara? Ubo acher v'nat lo mimena. Eino nikra Rasha. He's not a Rasha. Again, we got to keep everything. Remember, we're only allowed to change one variable. Whenever you have a scientific experiment, you're only allowed to change one variable. So if you understand the scenario of Ani HaMehapech b'charara, what's the Ani trying to do? What's the Ani trying to do?
Either buy or be the first to grab.
Grab what?
The harara.
Either from Hefker or a purchase.
Right.
But he's an Ani trying to buy a cake.
Oh, that's his daily meal.
Why would an usher be different, says the Ran, but an usher who is coming to buy that cake? So again, you only have to change one variable. So I have the usher. I have an Ani standing in front of the last cake, and he wants to buy it. Or the Ani is trying to convince the baker to give it to him. And an usher comes along, and he buys the cake, right? Or he convinces the Balabait to give it to him for free. Okay, he's not called a Rasha. Why not? Says the Ran. But not everybody's going to agree with this. But this is the Ran's opinion, and it makes a lot of sense. Okay, but Ashir HaMehapech b'charara ubo acher v'nat lo mimenu eino nikra Rasha. Why? Lefisha Asher matzui loy lechem bebeso. The rich guy, if he doesn't buy this cake, he still has lots of bread at home. Oh, likach mishchenov. Or if he doesn't, he can buy because he's got lots of money to buy from his friends. So the Ashir Mahapech b'charara, there's no restriction for somebody else stepping in.
This was Ephraim's point last week.
That what?
Exactly that. Ephraim, you darshaned that it's
only
dafka that they write Ani.
Because he has no other resources. Right. He needs this. The usher doesn't need it because he has other options. So that's a nice chiddush of the Ran. Can he prove it, or is it just his opinion? And here's again Rishonim. I like to quote this. I think I've mentioned this a number of times from Rabbi Hirschfeld's Rebbe. Svaras are a dime a dozen. You want to say something misvara? No. You can have svara zahin, svara zaher. You could say it makes a difference. Oh, sure, it doesn't make a difference. Sources. So the Ran is going to prove it from the sources. The afal gav. What's that Zion? I'm sorry. The afal gav dibahai Uvda dirav gidol muchrach de be'asher haba likach shaykh nami din ani HaMehapech. Wait, was Rav Gidol an usher or an ani?
We don't know.
Oh, yes, you do.
We know.
Sure you do.
I don't.
How do you know whether Rav Gidol is an ani or an usher?
Oh, it was his first land. It was the first deal at some point.
No, that's Rabbi Abba's first.
It was Rabbi Abba.
Rav Gidol's coming to buy a piece of property. It's not a 2-shekel cake. A piece of property is a lot of money. So he must have had a lot of money to buy a piece of land. You can't call him an ani. You can't call him an ani. So that's the Ran's proof. All right, is that Rav Gidol muchach de be'asher haba likach shaykh nami dina dani HaMehapech b'charara. Oh, is that a proof? No. Hani mili b'mekach karkos lefi she'ena karkos mitzuyin likach. Wow, listen to all the combining forces. He says, of course, Rav Gidol was a wealthy person. But what was he trying to do? He was trying to buy a piece of property. Properties aren't that available. So a businessman trying to buy a piece of property, he might be an ani because that's the only thing that's available, right? He may have found what's available to him. And you can't say, oh, well, you'll go buy somewhere else. Okay? Even though we talk about the other guy who comes Basheni, we tell him go find it somewhere else. But we're saying that an usher vis-a-vis property has the din of an ani vis-a-vis a cake. That's what the Ran is saying. Again, now you can see how you could argue on that. All right? And you could see, no. It's even an usher haba is going to be because the case of Gidol is clearly an usher, and we're quoting the case of ani. So you have to figure out how we navigate that. We're going to see this in some other Rishonim also. Okay, so that's the end of the Ran. Okay, so again, the Ran basically has summarized for us the differences between the Rabbeinu Tam and the Ramban. And we just go back to our sheet now. Let's go back to our page and just see to fill out the picture. We'll see the Ran in Bava Basra, where we would expect to be some consistency here. Okay, so I'm going back to the sheets, and again we're still on page 3, and we have the Ran on Bava Basra. Remember, the Ran on Bava Basra. There are two Gemaras. There are two Gemaras in Bava Basra. There was the Gemara of the fisherman. And when there was the Gemara of the Jew who gave money to the goy, and we say the property now is kemidbar, and the second guy comes in and buys it, and the question is whether the second guy is called an ani HaMehapech aboach v'natla. Is the first guy an ani HaMehapech b'charara, and the second guy is a aboach v'natla. So that's the Gemara in Bava Basra, where the Rashbam said he's a Rasha. He's a Rasha, but he doesn't have to pay. Okay, I'm sorry, he's a Rasha, but he has to pay. But it's an exceptional case why he has to pay, or not. Some others say no, mapitom. How can you? If you make him pay, then you're not really calling him a Rasha. He's got to pay. He didn't accomplish anything. Okay, so says the Ran in Bava Basra. Kol machzik ben zachaben. Kosav Rash. That's the Rashbam on the spot. Miu Rasha Mikri. He's a Rasha, the second guy. That's the Rashbam. If Beis Din can force the second guy to give back to pay the first guy, so for sure until he pays, he is a Rasha. That what he did makes him a Rasha, and the only way he can reverse being a Rasha is by paying. The kiva de mechayiv lemetan damim havi lekolokeach uvelokeach kulu almi moda the nikra Rasha. So now we're turning the first guy into a lokeach. So he has rights. Okay, he has rights. Who are we comparing him to? Apparently we're comparing him to Rabbi Abba. Okay, Abba, right? And so this is a little tricky here, because what's he proving? What's he proving from Kedushin? That since the Shimon has to pay Reuven. Well, Shimon bought the property, and he owns the property. Okay, just like Rabbi Abba owned the property. Rabbi Abba owned the property. The second guy owned the property. Well, according to, now the question is, did Rabbi Abba have to return the money to Rav Gidol? I'm sorry, I didn't say that right. Did Rabbi Abba have to sell the property to Rav Gidl in order to reverse what he did? Well, again, look what he's saying. Misha sover de chayiv lahachzer mos lelokech risha. Shimon has to pay money. He has to pay Reuven the money that Reuven gave to the goy. Rasha Mikri. And you're calling him a Rasha until he returns the money. The fact that you're making him pay means that he's called a Rasha. What does it mean is a lokeach? The first guy. Now we go back to Machlokas Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam. So remember, Rashi holds that you're Nikra Rashi even by Hefker. Rabbeinu Tam disagrees. But Rabbeinu Tam definitely says that if Reuven is trying to buy the property and Shimon steps in and buys it, when the Rani says kilokeach dami, he means that he's attempting to be a lokeach. So in our Gemara in Kedushin, Rav Gidl was attempting to be a lokeach. And are we calling Rabbi Abba a Rasha? Rav Gidl was attempting to be a lokeach. And Rabbi Abba is being called a Rasha for buying it. Okay, so that's clear then that the guy who bought the property that Reuven had already paid money for, he's a bigger Rasha than Rabbi Abba. Because Rabbi Abba bought a property that Rav Gidl hadn't yet paid for. And here, Shimon bought a property that Reuven had already paid for. So if Rabbi Abba is called a Rasha, says the Ran, Shimon is for sure called a Rasha. Okay? And if you make him pay back the money, that means you're calling him a Rasha. Because if he doesn't have to pay back the money, says, the Rishonim that put together, if you got to pay back the money, that means you're a Rasha. If we say you can go home, maybe you're not a Rasha. Maybe you're not a Rasha. Because it was in a lokeach, maybe you're not a Rasha. So he's saying no. All right? Let's follow this here for a minute. Wait, so if Shimon doesn't have to pay, why doesn't Shimon have to pay? Because Shimon relates to the karka as pure, unadulterated hefker. Shimon took hefker property. If I took hefker property, why should I have to pay anybody? Imkein having like a mitzia, and therefore it's like a mitzia. Okay, so then choluk alav Rabbeinu Tamza. Then if you're going to tell me that I don't have to pay money, and I am allowed to keep it, well, according to Rabbeinu Tam, the mitzia lo amrina nikra Rasha. If you're going to say I don't have to pay money, and the reason I don't have to pay money is because it's like hefker, then I'm not a Rasha. Meaning, we're arguing on the Rashbam. The Rashbam has two steps. The Rashbam's first step is Shimon is a Rasha. Now I can decide whether Shimon has to give back the money or not. But the Rashbam clearly makes Shimon into a Rasha. Well, if you don't have to give back the money, there's the calculation. If you don't have to give back the money, why don't you have to give back the money? Only because you're treating the karka like hefker. Because if you're treating the karka like, hey, wait a minute, as we saw in the Ramban, if Reuven has invested money in the property and you took the property that Reuven has invested money in, of course you have to give the money. But if you don't have to give the money, that means that the property is pure, unadulterated hefker. And according to Rabbeinu Tam, a property that's pure, unadulterated hefker, if I come and I take it, am I a Rasha or not a Rasha?
Not a Rasha.
I'm not a Rasha. So if you don't make me give back the money, that means it's hefker. And if it's hefker, according to Rabbeinu Tam, I'm not a Rasha. When the Rashbam says you are a Rasha, the Rashbam could make me a Rasha even if I don't have to give back the money. And the Rashbam says, I don't have to give back the money. So there's the inconsistency here a little bit. Because if I don't have to give back the money, it's like hefker. But if it's like hefker, why am I a Rasha? The answer is, the Rashbam holds like Rashi. The Rashbam holds like Rashi. The Rashbam holds you're called a Rasha because you are in Boachim and Nakla. He was a HaMehapech b'charara. But you don't have to give back the money because what property did Shimon take? He took hefker property. Why are you calling him a Rasha? Because Rashi holds that when you're Mahapech B'charara of Hefker and somebody takes it, you're a Rasha. So it's clear that the Rashbam holds like Rashi. But according to Rabbeinu Tam, if you had to give back the money, then I could call you a Rasha. But if I don't, ironically, having to give back the money means you're a Rasha till you give back the money. If I don't have to give back the money, according to Rabbeinu Tam, you can't call me a Rasha because I'm not giving back the money because it was Hefker. If it's Hefker, I'm not a Rasha. That's the calculation here. Yeah, Josh.
I'm getting a little caught in this, but the Rashbam holds like Rashi that somebody can be a Rasha for grabbing Hefker.
Exactly. That's why the Rashbam calls the Shimon who bought the property, bought the property, calls him a Rasha, and he doesn't have to pay Shimon, Reuven the money. So
in other words, according to the Rashbam and maybe Rashi, he's a Rasha with no tikkun. In other words,
no, that's not correct.
I mean, he could give up the property.
Oh, you're asking a different question. Now you're opening the door for another question, and we'll leave that for now, and we'll come back to this next time. According to Rashi, okay, so according to Rashi, according to the Ramban, said that it could even be Nofel ala Metzia, and Shimon comes and takes it. He's a Rasha. The Gemara just wasn't talking about that. Okay, but certainly when there's an HaMehapech b'charora, he's trying to get a cake for free from the baker, and Shimon comes in and takes the free cake instead of Reuven, he's a Rasha because he's Yored l'chaye chavero. Is there a tikkun for that? Is there a way to reverse it?
Give up the cake.
Exactly, of course. That's exactly right. Just because you're called a Rasha doesn't mean it's irreversible. It's reversible by giving. If you give Reuven the cake, you undid your rishus. But until you give Reuven the cake, you're a Rasha. That's exactly right, 100%. Okay, and that's why the Rashbam says the guy's a Rasha. Doesn't have to. Not having to pay means I can't force him to pay because he took Hefker. Is it appropriate? Do you think it's appropriate for Shimon to give Reuven the money for the karka?
Sounds appropriate.
Everybody would agree it's appropriate. Okay, and therefore you may be called a Rasha. You may not be called a Rasha. I'm sorry, you're called a Rasha. Okay, and you don't have to pay because you got it from Hefker. But when we put all the pieces together, and again, if we activate Vasisa Yasher Vatov, then of course you're not a Rasha because it was Hefker. But if you don't give it back, you're a slime ball. If you don't pay for it. Okay? That's what I would say. Okay, we'll leave it in. We're going to finish this Ran, a very important Ran. And then we're going to go to the Meiri on Bava Basra and more Rans. Maybe what we'll do is we'll skip first to the Ran. No, I want to stay in Bava Basra first. We'll do the Meiri, then we'll go to the Ran on Bava Metzia. And there's going to be at the end a very important Mordechai, which is brought lahalacha. The Mordechai gives us a big chiddush lahalacha that we will find resonating in the Tur Beis Yosef Shulchan Aruch. Okay. So Bezrat Hashem, I will see everybody on Sunday. Okay? Right. Cool.
Thank you.